In his only television interview for the political perspective today is independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Welcome. It's great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here. Let's start with the Federal Reserve, Robert, and you need to tell us and the viewers, potential voters maybe, how you view the Fed and its success in bringing down inflation since a year ago, March.
And thanks, Liz, for having me. I'm really happy to be here on this show. I'm happy that the inflation rate appears to be at least temporarily under control. But inflation is the most pernicious and insidious regressive tax on the poor. But high interest rates are also an enormous tax on the poor. The access to capital now that I'm seeing in poor neighborhoods all over the country is bankrupting small business in those neighborhoods. Our kids cannot get into a home because the interest rates have gone from 3% 2 years ago to, for them, the real cost about 7.5% or 8% inflation to buy a home. And the cost of housing has gone from $215,000 average cost in this country to $400,000. So you have an entire generation of kids that is not getting into homes. The long-term issue is spending, because inflation and high interest rates are just symptoms. They're just medicine, and they both are poisonous medicines. And so we need to get spending under control. We need to dramatically reduce the military spending. War in Ukraine we've already committed $113 billion to that. President Biden wants to raise the stakes to $200 billion. We've wasted $8 trillion on useless wars over 20 years that have made Americans less safe abroad and at home and are bankrupting our country. We need to also get health care costs under, and nobody's under control. That's the biggest cost, $4.3 trillion a year. Nobody's talking about that except for me, and I'm the one who can bring those healthcare costs under control.
Hold on. To be fair, President Biden has talked about attacking, high drug prices. Bernie Sanders just last week came out and said he was ready to subpoena 3 big pharma company CEOs because he's infuriated that the United States consumers are paying 10 times what France is paying. I mean, these are developed countries, forget Africa. So there are people out there that are trying to work on this. How would you tackle something like that?
Well, yeah, and those are good starts to start standing back against pharmaceutical companies that now own Congress and own the regulatory agencies. But the biggest thing we need to do is to reduce the chronic disease epidemic. And when my uncle was president, we were paying in 1960 to 63, we were paying about 4% of GDP on healthcare. Today, it's 20%. And the principal addition is chronic disease. So we've gone up to $4.3 trillion a year. We spend more than any other per capita nation in the world. We have the worst health outcomes. Why is that? Because the United States of America, has the highest chronic disease burden of any country in the world. We have neurological disease, obesity, autoimmune diseases that suddenly appeared in the 1990s and that are now the principal cause. 93% of Medicare bills are chronic disease. And, we had the highest death rate during COVID. We had 16% of the COVID deaths. We only have 4.2% of the world population. So why is that? Well, CDC says because we have the highest chronic disease rate. So that's the real pandemic. And NIH will not do those studies to find out. We know these are environmental toxins that are causing this.
Well, can I interrupt you because I'm looking right now as a business network. I'm looking right now, and the stock market is going down. They want more punch bowl filling. They would like to see rates cut so that the money to borrow for whatever growth, whatever it is, becomes cheaper. And today, Jay Powell said, no, that is not going to happen. I've seen some of your opinions on the Federal Reserve and specifically say, for example, the U.S. dollar, Bitcoin, and how you would enable no taxes for people who make money off Bitcoin. And on top of everything else, you have also specifically said that you propose this idea to back the dollar with Bitcoin, beginning, though, with a very small number of treasuries. That's a very complicated issue, considering Bitcoin is incredibly volatile in price, although people are now getting to invest in it due to the Bitcoin spot ETFs.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think we need to fix the Fed. We need to return U.S. sovereignty to the Fed. We need to return transparency to the Fed. We need to make the Fed more responsive to the markets and more responsive to the 12 regional banks, rather than have the kind of voodoo that now dictates Fed policy, and that is designed really to shift wealth upward to this new oligarchy of billionaires. In terms of my proposals, what I said is that I don't propose that all transactions in Bitcoin be untaxed, but that there be a cap to up to a certain amount. If you allow big holders like BlackRock to escape taxation on the increases in value for Bitcoin, you'd give a windfall of trillions of dollars to the richest people in our country, which they don't need. But people who have small transactions or buying gasoline or buying who are using it. We want to encourage people to use hard currency in the marketplace. My other proposal is very, very modest, which is that we use a basket of hard currencies, including platinum, including gold, and including perhaps Bitcoin, as a basis for maybe 1% of certain classes of T-bills, and see what happens. See if that has any capacity to inject discipline onto inflationary policies.